YouTubers. Hopefully you already knew that. If not, I promise we don't just talk about Sonic the Hedgehog original characters. That's not really our shtick, even though that's what we've been doing for like the last 10 minutes straight. We are horror narrators on YouTube. We narrate short stories called Creepypastas. I would explain the name, but I don't want to. Basically, just short, scary stories, of which we write a lot of, and some of the ones we will do. This is going to be great, can't you already tell? I'm going to talk out loud.
It's called blah blah, but it's time.
It's called me.
Spooky spaghetti.
Some of which we wrote ourselves. Terrifying tortellini.
Frightening fettuccine.
Yeah, you guys thought you were here to hear scary stories, but this is really what the next 90 minutes is going to be. And if you weren't here for our performance last night, we're going to be doing it again today.
How many people were here yesterday?
I already asked that question.
I wasn't around. How many of you were here yesterday and saw our performance? Just you? Just you? What? Okay, that's good. That's good.
That's good. That means you don't get to judge us when we do the exact same stories twice around here. We will be doing different stories.
We will be doing different stories.
Slightly different stories. Probably a lot of the same, but some different stories. How many of you in general have seen us perform at any convention before? Like any convention, not just Delta H Con, but just in general. One more hand. Cool.
Me.
That's fantastic. That's actually a great answer, and we love it when we get no answers on that, or very few, because that means we can recycle stories that we use all the time on you guys, and you guys are like, this is so cool, and we're like, yeah, I know, I do it at every convention, because I'm lazy. So, but you guys don't know that. So, to you guys, this is all new and super, original content that we worked on for forever. In reality, it's what we do every single convention. I'm kidding, by the way. So what we're going to do is we're going to be doing some live performances of some of these narrations that we do on YouTube in a live format. We have to give the disclaimer, even though it is...
Bless you. Bless you.
Sorry. Go ahead.
That was you making the noise, right? No, I just need to know that was you making the noise.
Oh,
I just need to confirm that was you indeed who made that noise.
Hi.
Alright, so anyway, the disclaimer, if I can maybe not be rudely interrupted again by balloons, is that this is an all ages panel. It does not have an age restriction on it. However, some of the content that we do talk about is a little bit sensitive subject matter. If blood, guts, gore, murder, violence, or any of the above are things that you are not comfortable with, or talks of killing other people or killing yourself, things of that nature, those do get mentioned or brought up. So consider this a trigger warning. If you don't enjoy those things or they make you uncomfortable, this may not be the right panel for you. We have a really fun Q&A tomorrow at 1 o'clock where we talk about cats. So, depending on what kind of content you're looking for, you will have an option for both of those things. So, with that being said, we're going to go ahead and get kicked off. I'm going to let Creepypasta Jr. take the first swing, and we will get started.
Okay, so I did this story yesterday, and I love doing this story because it's so good. And I'm going to do it again. So you're going to get to enjoy this. I love symmetry. I'm not sure exactly why, but I've loved it ever since I was a kid. Most children are messy and forgetful of their things. Not me. Oh, no. I knew everything had its place. And in my room, everything was right where it belonged. My parents didn't have it. My grandparents didn't have it either. Not a single person in my family had it. I've started referring to it as it because I truly believe it's something inside of me, a stowaway that shouldn't be there, but lives in my core. It's a need, a desire, a longing to be perfect. Perfect on both sides. As an adult, I'm at the point where I can't live my life normally. I can't keep a job. Women don't stay with me because they just can't handle it. Honestly, I don't even care when they leave. They're messy and they make things so difficult. They roll over onto my side of the bed instead of staying on their own. They leave dishes in one side of the sink, but not the other. I can't work anymore. So when they leave for the day, I have to stay home and fix everything. It's a relief when they leave for good, though. But that feeling never lasts. Eventually, it comes back and finds something else that needs fixing. You may be asking yourself, why? Why would I seek out relationships to begin with if I just can't stand them? Well, it's hard for me to sleep in the middle of the bed all night without moving. Other than the relationship problems, my life is pretty much in order. I say pretty much because there is one last issue that must be dealt with. You see, I have what's called heterochromia iridium, or two different colored irises. My right eye, a cornflower blue. My left eye is a pale green. Both my parents have cornflower blue eyes, my siblings and cousins as well. My green eye is the broken one. It makes me unbalanced. Every time I look at myself in the mirror, it stares right back at me. It's all I ever think about now. Everything is in its right place except for my green little mistake. It didn't hurt at first when I dug the spoon under my eye. It didn't even hurt when it popped out and was just hanging by my cheek. Was it shock that was keeping the pain away, or was it it? I snipped the optic nerve that blotted the warm fluids that were streaming down my face. My vision being cut in half was a strange sensation. What was left of the dangling flesh I placed now back into the empty socket. I bandaged the wound, rinsed the spoon, and went to sleep. I woke up happy. I slept better than I had in years. It was finally done. I was fixed. I got out of bed and stumbled to my bathroom. Oh, my body ached and my head was on fire. I flipped the switch in the bathroom and the light was blinding. Slowly, I removed the bandage that was soaked with blood and was sticking to my face like tape. But when I looked up into the mirror, my stomach turned. Only then had I realized what I had done to myself. I couldn't believe it. There was a hole in the left side of my face, but not the right. I was unbalanced. Again. It was much harder digging out the second eye. My hands were shaky, and when I dug the spoon in, I missed several times, puncturing my pupil 3 times before I got it in the right place. Once the eye popped out, I reached for my scissors to finish the job. The blood from the previous night had dried on the blade, so the scissors, they didn't cut very well. You know when you're a kid in elementary school and your teacher makes you cut construction paper for art projects? Did you ever try to cut too many pieces at once? But the scissors just couldn't take it. The blades would kind of fold over each other and the paper would get pinned between them. That's what happened with my eye. The optic nerve was pinned between the 2 blades. It was stuck, and as I tried desperately and frantically to make it unstuck, I slipped on the blood and started falling to the floor. My reflexes kicked in, and I let go of my eye to try to break my fall with my hand. The weight on the stuck scissors on my hanging eye was so unbearable. I knew I couldn't stand it long enough to make it to the kitchen, so I pulled it right out of my head. I felt the flesh tear from inside my skull. I felt it rip and spew liquids everywhere. I knew I was crying, but there was no telling the tears from the blood from the ocular fluid. When I heard the wet slap of bloody flesh against the tile floor, I knew I was done. I knew it was done. I could live my life now without having to see people's awful, messy, uneven lives. Relief washed over me, and I knew it would last this time. I never felt this way before. I've never had this much hope. As I laid in my bathroom on that cold, wet, sticky tile, I smiled for the first time in years. The end.
Yeah, we give that nice little disclaimer and then we just
Go right into it.
right into it.
But that is probably the worst
Yeah,
gore
it's probably the
story.
goriest story. Well, I don't know. Last night you brought a pretty gory one to the table. I'm gonna keep the gore going. And do one of my goriest stories. This is actually, people ask us all the time, what's your favorite creepypasta? This is mine. This is my favorite creepypasta. I do it at every convention. And it's called Out With a Bang. And I am going to tell it for you guys tonight. As soon as he starts the music.
Start.
It's in the middle. This is the creepypasta. It's that we have AV difficulties. There we go.
So many good tracks to pick from.
I've decided that I am going to kill myself. I think it's important that somebody understands why, so I'm telling you this before I blow my head off. The first time that I remember it happening, I was 9 years old. Johnny Weller and I were playing in his backyard. The sun was setting over his back fence, warm oranges and reds shining through the bone-white slats like a creamsicle against pearly white teeth. Johnny was the cowboy, and I was the Indian, and I had stolen his horse. We ran around the swing set, him laughing and me whooping and threatening to scalp him. When he tripped, I ran to where he was laying in the dirt, scooping up a handful of air and pointing my finger at his nose, proclaiming, "I got your gun now!" Bang! Johnny's head exploded in a tremendous blossom of crimson blood, slate gray brain, and chips of skull that sparkled in the setting sun. My hand felt lifeless to my side, and I stared open-mouthed, unable to understand what just happened. Someone was screaming. At first, I thought it must be Johnny's mother until she tore open the back door and I realized that I was the one screaming. Johnny's mother crumpled against her son's headless body, adding her broken sobs to my horrified cries. Johnny's funeral was the next week. Closed casket. I forgot the sparkling light shimmering across the cloud of Johnny's blood. I forgot Johnny's mother ragdolling my little body, begging me to tell her what happened to her son. I forgot the sheriff telling my mother that Johnny was hit by a falling bullet, one of 26 cases each year. I forgot my father's quiet talks with my mother about how they never found the bullet that spattered Johnny's smile across the grass. I adjusted and I coped and I forgot. But I didn't forget the next time that it happened. I never played Cowboys and Indians again. In fact, I can't remember a single instance of any shooting game played by little girls and boys anywhere in my childhood. I do remember the little girl in the park, popping her little Nerf balls as she bounced around playfully. She ran up to me, brandishing the weapon and shouting, "Hands up!" I smiled and complied, dropping my sandwich in mock terror. I lifted my hands to the sky and petitioned her for mercy. A true homicidal maniac in the making, she executed me with a flurry of staccato pop-pop-pops. I dutifully played dead, sprawling out across my bench. She giggled and proclaimed to me, "Your turn, shoot me." A sudden sensation of intense discomfort slithered up my spine. I bought her flowers, glittering crimson roses wet with morning dew. And she eyed me impatiently, apparently convinced she might have to nerf me once more to provoke a response. I lifted my finger weakly, pointed at her, and whispered, This time, I wasn't the one screaming. Her mother cradled her baby's dismembered limbs, frantically clutching an arm, then a leg. I had pointed my finger at the little girl's belly button. The moment that the word left my lips, she ruptured like a water balloon filled with punch and soaking bits of crimson-colored fruit. Johnny Weller's decapitated body filled my vision, the slow red of sunset sliding down the front of his striped shirt. And I did the only thing I could think of. I ran. I can't do this anymore. I got so pissed at Andrew yesterday, and I put my finger in his face to tell him off. I didn't even say it. I didn't even have to say it. And now, I can't bring myself to stop my fiance's brains off of my kitchen floor. I can't do this anymore. All I have to do is put my finger against my temple and say it. At least I'll go out with a bang. The end. That's my favorite story because one time I made somebody fall out of their chair.
Bang! Gotcha.
I also had a girl scream one time when I did the thing because she was genuinely convinced that I was going to die in front of the whole audience. And I would have been like, well, that would have been awesome on my part for having superpowers. It would have been a really inconvenient time to find out.
You ready? My therapist suggested I write this out. I guess reliving that night and putting my experiences on paper will help me to get over the trauma. A few years ago, I was in a motorcycle wreck. Broke my left tibia and fibula, shattered my right patella, and got a green stick fracture in my left femur. Multiple fractures in my pelvis, breaks in almost all of my ribs, and 2 broken collarbones. I was immobilized from the shoulders down by a heavy body cast. They told me I was lucky. My wife, Violet, was supportive and nurturing. She never once complained about having to care for me. She cooked all of my meals, kept me company, and emptied my bedpan without grimacing. About 2 weeks into my convalescence, Jenna called us crying because her college roommate died. Vi had to leave immediately, and just to be there for, Vi's sister, Kathy, was going to take care of me for the weekend. When I woke up the following morning, Vi was off to get Jenna. Kathy was there, cheerfully making breakfast and talking up a storm as she helped me with my more embarrassing biological needs. Like her sister, she never made me feel ashamed. She left around 11 that night and told me that she'd be back at dawn. I like to sleep with the TV on. For some reason, I find it comforting. I apparently had drifted off while the game was finishing and only awoke when I felt something thud against the cast on my chest. In the flickering light of the television, I saw the largest Huntsman spider staring back at me. She was bigger than most of the ones I had seen around here, maybe the length of a football. My breath caught in my throat, and every muscle in my body fired in an attempt to push the thing off me. But I couldn't move. I started yelling at the spider. hoping to scare her away. But she wasn't frightened, oh no. She turned around, exposing her abdomen to me, and I gasped. Her back and belly were covered in baby spiders. They rippled like wind-blown fur as they moved over her mother's body. The huntsman turned back towards me and walked towards my face. Before then, I had never thought about spiders having a scent, but this one did. It smelled like wet dirt, sort of how like the outside smells after a rainstorm. The smell intensified as its long legs reached my face. I squeezed my mouth and eyes shut. Its prickly legs advanced, first touching my lower lip, then my nose, then my eyelids, and finally my forehead. Its leg span stretched from ear to ear, hairline to chin. Its thick, heavy body ran from my chin to right between my eyes. And then it stayed there. I tried to hold my breath. To say I was horrified was an understatement. I wished I was dead. I prayed to be dead. My prayers went unanswered as it walked a little higher, letting its abdomen brush against my nose. Then, the unthinkable happened. I sneezed. The huntsman immediately buried its fangs into my forehead as her baby streamed from her body onto my face. I shrieked. Tiny spiders crawled over my cheeks, squirmed through my beard, and hid my eyelashes. I thrashed my head back and forth in an attempt to get them off me. Their mother moved onto the pillow, right by my ear, and bit my cheek again. It felt like a wasp's sting. Then, she ran over my shoulder and pushed herself through the tiny opening of the cast in my armpit. At this point, I was screaming uncontrollably. A sea of baby arachnids explored my nostrils, hair, and were starting to find my ears. I felt a tendon or ligament or something snap as I thrashed, sending white-hot pain going through my neck. Trying to move my head after that was excruciating. As the babies dispersed throughout my face and head, the mother explored underneath my cast. To this day, I have no idea how she was able to compress herself to fit under the thing. She wandered over to my chest, to my stomach, and down to my groin. She exited the cast by a hole nearby, only to move back inside by my legs. And she stopped at the underside of my knee, and that's where she stayed. When Kathy arrived in the morning, I had somehow passed out from all the exhaustion brought on by the horror I had experienced, and it just forced my body to shut down, even though my mind was still soaked in terror. Oblivious to the events of the night before, Kathy shook me to wake. I started screaming again. I felt the huntsman behind my knee. She must have been sleeping too and started to wake by my yelling. She bit my leg over and over, and as Kathy tried to calm me down and try to get me to fill her in on what was happening, by the time I was able to tell her, she looked like she was about to faint. I had always considered myself somewhat of an arachnophobe, but Kathy's fear was light years beyond my own. She called the emergency services, and they sent a couple of guys who were able to coax the thing out and to kill her. In the end, it was all very anticlimactic. Vi came home with Jenna later in the day, and Kathy and I told her about my night. Neither of them were able to listen to the details. A family of arachnophobes. Time went by, and my broken bones knitted together and healed, and eventually I was back on my motorcycle. Every night, though, I dream about that huntsman staring at me. I feel her young streaming across my face and up my nose and around the gaps of my teeth. Whenever there's a quiet moment, I can hear them scratching at my eardrums. And I swear, every single time I clean my ears, I'm pulling out little bits of eggs. The end. Yummy.
Is anyone else itchy? Fun fact, that was the first time I've ever heard that story too. Good thing I wasn't part of the emergency services they called, because I would have been like, guess we have to chop your leg off. There's no way I'm calling that thing out.
We're gonna have to burn you, sir.
Yes. Sorry, sir, we're just gonna have to burn your house down. It's over. Like, you had a good run. You wanted to die. You said please. Wish granted. Have a good day. We have to bomb your entire neighborhood. Like, it's unsalvageable at this point. I'm so itchy.
A funny little side note, when I was really young, I'm a terrible arachnophobe personally, and when I was really young, I was running up my basement stairs, and our basement stairs had little slats, and I tripped, and my arm went right through one, right into a spider's nest. Crawled all up my arm. I took up the stairs, outside, running down the street. It was the worst. So yeah.
No, thank you.
That is my fear.
Spiders don't bother me that much, but the idea of something crawling into my ears is a no thanks. I'm good. I'm set. I ate before I came. No thank you. Thanks for being so gracious of a host.
I'll crawl into your ears.
No thanks. No, this isn't a creepypasta, but this is just like a messed up thing my parents used to tell us as kids. As we were working in the family business, licking envelopes as children, to like do mailers and stuff, they'd be like, oh yeah, this one girl, she licked the edge of an envelope and got a paper cut on her tongue, and there were spider eggs on the edge of the envelope, and they like went through her tongue, and then they incubated in there and hatched, and she had spiders in her tongue, ha ha ha, and we're like, good story, bro. Good story, Mom. Totally good. Can't wait to lick these 40,000 envelopes now. Oh God. Okay. My turn. It's gonna be on top. He always, for such an arachnophile, he always tells spider stories. Always.
Because there's
Last
so
convention we
many-
did, he told a spider story.
Now, on
Exposure therapy, I guess.
on my YouTube channel, one of that author is notorious for writing disgusting stories like that. And he wrote about one kid playing hide and seek, hid in a old refrigerator in a junkyard. Got trapped with a bunch of earwigs that pinched them and crawled into his ears and face and everything. It's a pretty good story. You should listen to it. It's yummy.
Okay, so I'm actually gonna surprise. I'm gonna throw a curveball. This is one that we have never ever done live, and by we I mean me. So hopefully this goes well. This is a story called "Don't Mind Me." Buckle up. My family has always been big into conspiracies. My sister likes to ramble on about the Illuminati and believes that Obama is the Antichrist. My mom can trace literally anything in life back to being the government's fault, and constantly worries about being arrested and shipped overseas for no reason. My dad, although staying quiet most of the time, agrees with what my mom says. It really just annoys me when I hear them all just spewing that 2012 into the world garbage. So I usually attempt to slip quietly off to my room. That is, before my mother follows me and decides to continue her half of the conversation from just outside my door. For the last year, I've been kind of keeping to myself. When I'm not in class or doing the countless hours of homework per week that I usually have to do, I'm usually doing typical hermit teenage stuff. Watching TV, messing around on the internet, knitting, playing video games. I really enjoy horror games and movies and just scary stuff in general. I use the past tense of enjoy because it's safe for me to say that no, I don't enjoy them anymore. Going back a year or so, I finally saved up enough money to buy a laptop. Something that I thought was cool about it was that it came with a built-in microphone and webcam. Two things that I've never had before. The first thing that my sister told me to do was put a piece of masking tape over my webcam. She also said, whatever I do, don't sleep with my laptop open. She thinks that people can watch you through your webcam even when it's not on. Like I was about to believe that. since she's my older sister, ever since we were kids, she was always trying to bully me into being gullible. Getting me to eat dog biscuits when I was 5, insisting that if I did, I would know how to speak dog. Or telling me to lick a 9-volt battery for God knows what reason. Sometimes it seemed like she hated me. As I've grown up, I've learned to trust her less and less. And this whole people spying on me through my webcam business sounded nothing short of idiotic. For the last few months, I suffered from insomnia, and the only way that I could go to sleep was with some type of white noise machine playing. Every night, I had the same routine. After finishing my homework, I would watch an episode or two, or of whatever show I seemed to be fixated on the time, and I would plug in my laptop, set it on the nightstand in front of me, go to rainymood.com before shutting off my screen light and letting the rain noises lull me to sleep. At the time, I associated the nightmares with the insomnia. I figured it was just a side effect. It was bizarre though. I've always had vivid dreams, but I hadn't had nightmares since I was a kid. I thought it was something everyone grew out of, and although it wasn't the same dream every night, it was the same basic concept. There's always the sound of rain. I'd presumed from the white noise that I had said before I fell asleep. I walk into a room, usually something familiar. My bedroom, my dad's workshop, the daycare room that I work in, my old high school theater, or my English classroom at the college. But there were always people waiting for me there. All the people that I knew, my mom, dad, sister, neighbors, both old and current friends and teachers, and sometimes even some of the children that I watch when I'm at work. They're all lined up around the perimeter of the room, shoulder to shoulder, staring at me, but none of them ever say a word. They just stare. I move around the room, and their eyes just follow me. A dozen chilling, terrifying stares drilling into me. In my dream, I never have the sense to flee the area. After an eternity of just tense, uncomfortable silence, someone finally speaks. It's always my sister. She always says, "Don't mind us. We're only here to observe. Carry on." Frightened, in a cold sweat, I always do what I'm told. I do my homework, I knit, I play a game. Whenever I look up from my task, they look at me, scowling angrily. Then, they all take one simultaneous step forward, tightening the area around me. I panic and look back at whatever task I was supposed to be doing. My fingers forget how to write, or type, or knit, or do anything. And whenever I fumble, and my productivity stops, I can feel the anger, the pure malice from these people who I've come to know and to care for and I love. I can feel my skin tingling. They take another step. Claustrophobia sets in, and I start hyperventilating and break out in a cold sweat again. Another step. I hear growling. This inhuman, but not even animal-like sounding growl coming from the wall of, God, I can't even call them people. These things surrounding me. It's something that you wouldn't be able to recreate with special effects, even if you tried. It's the most disturbing thing I've ever heard. Another step. Another step. With the enclosure narrowed down to less than a foot on every side of me, I feel a hand on the back of my head. I always assume the worst, that perhaps the hand is going to tear out the back of my skull, but the jagged nails just run through my hair. And I hear a voice. Hush. I turn to see a figure. Someone I've never met before. Supposedly in a dream, anyone you see has to be someone that you've seen in real life, but he's so distorted. There's no way that I could have ever met someone like this, except maybe at a costume party on Halloween. His eyes are completely missing. There's nothing but two big black holes where they're supposed to be. He smiles, and dark red liquid slides off his jagged teeth, landing on his lower lip. He suddenly grabs the back of my hair and jerks me around until I'm facing the crowd of people I used to recognize, as he laughs like a madman. The dim light makes it hard to make everything out. They all have very dark circles under their eyes, and their eyes seem to be glowing red. They glare at me with pure hatred. Everything's all right. With that, they all lunge at me, screeching. This is the point where I usually wake up. Sleep paralysis usually leads me to panic and cry like a child. I can still feel the tightness around my throat, the jagged nails in my hair, the pressure in my chest. My pillow is always drenched in sweat. I've never connected the two until now, but I always get this nightmare when I leave my laptop open while I'm sleeping. Well, let's see, I fell asleep around 11 last night. If the time is 3:53 a.m. now, I would say about 45 minutes ago, I woke up. I turned over and reached for my glasses so that I could check the time. I couldn't find my phone. Since my laptop was right in front of me, I turned on the screen so that I could see the clock. Something else caught my eye first. Skype was opened. I am currently in a call with the number 000-000-0000. The call time is currently 4 hours, 25 minutes, and 11 seconds. The man that I've seen in my dream for all of these months is on the other line. Through the camera, I can see that he's watching me, still. He's only said one thing to me. Don't mind me. I'm only here to observe. Carry on. If I could leave anyone with just one piece of advice, it's this. Don't ever sleep with your laptop open. The end. That is a cautionary tale. I'm more likely to say, don't fall asleep with your laptop open because your friends will come mess with your computer and hack your Facebook page.
Well, after waking up with a jolt, the girl laid in bed a few seconds longer. Reaching over to switch on her bedside lamp, she tried to remember what exactly had stolen her sweet slumber away. When she couldn't, the brunette swung her legs over the side of the bed and heaved herself up. Checking the time on her phone, she laughed when she saw it was midnight, the witching hour. Knowing that sleep would only evade her, she left her bedroom for the kitchen, a good cup of coffee on her mind. As she passed by her front door, a chill spread like liquid fire down her spine. It's only winter, she told herself, focusing again on the coffee. Measuring out scoops, water, and preparing her cup kept her occupied. But as the dark liquid boiled, she had nothing left to keep her mind from wandering off. The chill returned, and she couldn't help but glance behind her to the front door. It stood there, innocently enough, just like it always had. The deadbolt was still in place, and she could see nothing amiss with it. Turning back to her coffee, she did her best to just forget about the feeling. With her cup in hand, she started back towards her bedroom. As she walked by the front door, she decided that a quick glance out of the eye hole would help calm her restless mind. The chill worsened with each step she took towards the door and further away from the safety and warmth of her blankets. She pressed her empty hand against the cold metal door frame and took a deep breath before leading her eye to the eye hole. At first, she could only see an inky darkness that somehow seemed to swirl in on itself. When she blinked in surprise, the void melted away. But she wished it hadn't. In its place, there stood what she could only guess was once a man. The limbs were long and inhumanly awkward, with bulky joints branching off into several arms, not unlike the branches of a tree. The creature was draped in a black suit, somehow making this thing even more nightmarish to her. The icing on the proverbial cake, however, was what passed for the creature's face. It was as though her mind blurred the ghastly visage to spare itself further shock and horror. She shoved herself away from the door with the hand still pressed against it. The scalding mug of coffee fell, liquid burning her bare legs as she fell backwards and tried to crawl away from the door. She knew, somehow, that her mind wasn't playing tricks on her. As she backed away from the door, she watched as tendrils as black as the night snake through the cracks of the door. This girl was trapped between the instinct to flee and the gut feeling to not turn her back on the door. The door jolted. The urge to flee overcame her, and she slipped in the burning liquid as she tried to make her way back to her room. She knew deep down that she was trapping herself in a corner, but she had to get away from the door. The girl was halfway down the hallway when she heard the previously locked door creak open. She screamed and slipped into a wall, smacking her head on it and stunning her. After that, there was only blackness. Nicole? A warm male voice snapped the woman out of her trance. As she turned around, she was met by one of her sister's doctors. She nodded, not sure if she should say anything or even if she could find a voice to say something if she had something to say. That morning, she had received an urgent phone call from the hospital saying that her sister Lindsay was admitted. Before they had even let her see her, the doctors had pulled her off to the side and insisted that they talk about what might have happened. Phrases like self-inflicted and assault had been thrown around, and Nicole felt her mind reel back. She hadn't fully understood what they had been saying until she saw Lindsay with her own eyes. Her little sister had bandages wrapped around her entire head, covering both her ears as well as her eyes. They said it was to keep her now deadened eyes from drying out, and to try to keep the infection out of the wounds Lindsay had made into her ears. The doctors had guessed that either she or someone else had jammed a pencil into them to keep her off balance or to deafen her against something. There was a mix of first and second degree burns on her hands, legs, and feet from what was assumed to be the coffee her neighbors found slopped all over the entry to her apartment. As Nicole walked into her sister's hospital room for the very first time, she thought she had spied the silhouette of a man in the window. But she knew that had to be impossible, because her sister's hospital room was on the third story. The end. That was about Slender Man, by the way. You couldn't tell.
That was about spiders.
It was about Sonic the Hedgehog staring at me in a hospital window. Gotta go fast.
Don't mind me. It's about Spider-Man. Okay, let's see if I can find this ghost story. Because I've got a lot of text box open. There we go. Alrighty. Nope. Absolutely not. Because that was the wrong one. There we go. Alright, so this is, like you said, we're going to do some ones that we wrote ourselves. This is one that I did last night, so if you were here last night, I'm sorry I had to sit through the whole thing again. This is one that I wrote. It's actually a pretty more recent one called The Weeper. It's only been on my channel for like a month, so it's really, really new, and you guys get to hear it performed for the second time ever. So buckle up. Yes. I thought that was someone in the audience. I'm like, I like that person's enthusiasm. Yes. No pressure. Alright, now. You know that feeling that you get when you see something that you weren't supposed to see? That gut-wrenching churn that you feel in the pit of your stomach when you realize that you can't unsee whatever it was that you just witnessed? That feeling where it almost feels like you've made a mistake by witnessing whatever it was, but yet it was completely beyond your control. Yeah, I know that feeling. In fact, I've definitely seen something that I shouldn't have. And now that something is watching me. I doubt I have much time, so I'll try to make this quick. I don't know what use it is for me to give you any warning. Should you find yourself in my situation, there's not much you can do anyway. At least, not much that I know of. I don't know why it chose me. I don't know why it chooses anyone. But should it choose you, the only thing that you can do is pray that you manage to avoid looking at it no matter how hard it tries to get your attention. I don't know when or how it first saw me. I guess probably one of the many nights that I was walking home late after class when I would cut through the park by the lake. That's where it seems to be most of the time, so if at all possible, avoid that park, or, well, any park at night, I guess. That seems like a pretty good rule of thumb to follow anyway, so that shouldn't be too hard to remember. But whenever it was that it actually saw me, that must have been when it chose me. I don't know if it chose me because I took that route on a regular basis, or if I'm just lucky. But either way, all it took was 2 weeks of me taking that same way home every night before it had made its decision. And anyway, 2 weeks. At the 2-week mark is when it decided that I was its target. Well, target probably isn't a good word for it. Prey. Prey is probably a more appropriate term. That night felt just like any other night. I was exhausted from a long day, and I had my earphones in as I made my way through the park. The park has a lot of trees along the lake and sidewalk. Not enough to be considered a forest or anything, but enough that the dim orange glow of the street lamps, well, they created dozens and dozens of these tall, dark silhouettes. It was a little eerie, but it wasn't enough to keep me from taking that way home for the last 2 weeks straight. On that particular night, about halfway through the park, is when it first tried to get my attention. It started with a sound that made me take out my earphones, confused and searching all around me for the source. Have you ever been wearing earphones or headphones that canceled out sound and you thought you heard someone saying your name but you couldn't tell for sure? That's what this was like. It was subtle, but enough for me to notice and freeze me in my tracks. I can't really describe what the noise was. It sounded like a whisper, but I couldn't make out any of the words. The sound was gone as soon as I took my earphones out. And after a quick 360-degree turn to assess my surroundings, I came to the conclusion that my mind was playing tricks on me due to exhaustion. I was a little spooked, and I made the second half of my trip to the park a lot quicker than the first. Fortunately for me, I hadn't been paying enough attention to notice it standing about 500 feet away from me beneath one of the street lamps. But the next night was different. My morning classes had been canceled, so I wasn't nearly as exhausted on the trip home. My mind was on a new video game that I had tucked into my backpack that I was planning on tearing into when I got back to the house. I didn't have my earphones in this time. So, you can imagine my discomfort when I heard the sound again. The bizarre part about it was that even without the earphones, the sound was exactly the same. Something resembling quiet murmuring, just slightly too low to be able to make out the words. It was so brief, like someone saying my name, trying to get my attention, but so quickly and so quietly that I just couldn't tell for certain. The hair on the back of my neck stood on end, and I cautiously looked to the right and the left of me, expecting to see a hobo, or possibly just someone on their smartphone mumbling under their breath to themselves as they lose yet another game of Words with Friends. When I didn't see anyone, I got the gut-wrenching feeling that I was being watched. Thoroughly freaked out, I slowly took a step forward to continue my journey. Without skipping a beat, the sound of a branch snapping on the ground echoed about 500 feet behind me, off to the side of the walkway. Now genuinely frightened, I began to sprint as fast as I could away from the source of the noise. After putting an additional 600 to 700 feet between me and the noise in question, I made the mistake of turning around to look behind me. Although it was too far for me to see clearly, I was able to make out a tall, thin figure against the glow of a street lamp that it was standing under. From as far away as I was, it could have looked like a person, but I didn't give it a second look as I booked it out of the cart. Little did I know, that first glimpse was enough for it to get closer to me the next time around. I got out of class early the next day, and chalking last night's events up to either my imagination or some weirdo who wanted to sell me drugs in the park, I decided that since it was daylight, that it would be safe for me to take my normal park route home. I figured that there would be people in the park at that time of the day and no shadows to play tricks on my mind. Feeling totally at ease, I decided to swing by the ice cream cart that the local sweet little old ice cream man would push around the lake during the afternoon. I ordered my favorite, an ice cream sandwich, but I felt a cold shiver run down my spine as the old man lifted the shiny glass cover of his cart to retrieve it. That familiar, unsettling noise echoed through my ears, and in the reflection of the glass, I caught a glimpse of the same tall, dark figure from the night before, but this time, only about 400 feet away. I froze, terrified, for the brief few seconds that the old man had the cover of the cart lifted to retrieve my ice cream. My mind scrambled to remember what I had seen, but what my memory provided back to me didn't seem possible. The figure was easily 8, maybe 9 feet tall. Whoever or whatever it was dressed in a long black cloak, for lack of a better word. The face was the hardest part to remember. By this point, I still hadn't focused on its face, not that it made a difference. My thoughts raced, trying to comprehend why the ice cream guy wasn't freaking out with me and whatever the thing standing behind me was. The old man cheerfully handed me my purchase, raising an eyebrow and asking me if I was okay. I guess I must have nodded because he didn't press the issue any further. After a short moment of silence and no terrified reaction to anything behind me from the ice cream cart man, I mustered the courage to look behind me. Nothing there. I took my ice cream and proceeded on my walk home, my brain reeling for an answer as to what just happened. I finally took note that finals were next week, and I dutifully chalked that up to causing the alleged hallucinations and blamed it on underlying stress. I tried to shake off the uneasy feeling, but it never quite went away, even after I made it home. I don't know why, but I had felt like something followed me home. I wasn't as lucky the next evening. The park was closed for maintenance, my second option being to walk around the outside of the fence, an extra 20-minute walk down a quiet thoroughfare with an iron fence on one side and a poorly lit street on the other. I let out an aggravated sigh and began to make my way along the fence. I wish I had remembered my earphones instead of leaving them at school, because after about 10 minutes of walking in silence, I heard a sound that made my stomach sink. It started out so softly that I didn't hear it over the sound of myself walking, but eventually it became audible enough that I could clearly make out what it was. The sound of a hard object being dragged slowly across the iron bars of the fence, one by one. Slowly, but quickly enough to match the pace that I was walking, about 300 feet behind me. I didn't look behind me, but the hair on the back of my neck told me that something was there. As soon as I stopped walking, the clanging from behind me stopped as well. My heart was pounding so quickly that I couldn't even breathe. I don't know which was worse, knowing that something was behind me but not what it was, or the idea of turning around and actually seeing it with my own eyes. Deep down, I had a sinking feeling in my gut about what I would see if I turned, and not a single fiber of my being wanted anything to do with whoever or whatever it was. But the decision was made for me, it seems. Out of the silence from behind me, a new noise, similar to the murmurs from before, filled my ears, draining my face of color. A low, gurgling moan, like the wail of torment of someone drowning, echoed from behind me. Instinct caused me to quickly reel around and evaluate the source of the noise. And what I saw instilled a terror in me that I didn't think was possible. That feeling that I talked about earlier, the feeling of seeing something that you shouldn't have seen, that was the feeling that rushed over me as I stared at the creature in front of me. I had focused on the face this time, but out of my peripheral vision, I could see the long, thin black arms that hung almost to its knees. Attached to those arms were hands with slender bone-like fingers, easily 3 to 4 times longer than any human I'd ever seen. The body was inhumanely thin, and the proportions were grotesque and unnatural. The torso and legs, they were ghastly and long, and the creature's posture was crooked, like it had a kink or a hunch in its back that caused its shoulders to hang forward in front of its face. Its face, if it can even be called that. The first thing that I saw were the eyes. Small, very small, tiny, beady, little white eyes, sunken into large, gaping black holes. The top of the creature's face was covered by what looked to be a mask, made to resemble a white porcelain doll, but broken in half, missing everything from the nose downward. Around the eyes and eye holes of the mask were cartoonishly painted black eyelashes, like the ones you'd see on a Raggedy Ann toy. But the mask and the eyes beneath were nothing compared to the horror that hung beneath them. A grotesque abomination of a mouth hung loosely from the edge of the mask, swinging freely as if the creature's jaw had been severed on both sides, allowing it to just fall open, revealing a crudely removed tongue and 3 rows of human teeth along the bottom jaw. Behind the mask and around the mouth was smooth, black skin, torn brutally around where the jaws were once connected to the skull of whatever it was. From the nightmarish orifice that it had for a mouth, the gurgling moan emanated once again, still resembling a wail of despair. The sound was enough to snap me out of my state of shock, because I was able to realize that the creature had begun moving towards me. Its movements turned my stomach. The sound of bone on bone, and every joint in the creature's body popped and jerking in various directions grew louder and louder as it closed the distance between us. My fight or flight instinct finally switched into gear, and I turned and bolted in the opposite direction. But not before it had closed another 50 feet of the remaining 300-foot gap between us. That was when the realization finally sunk in. The longer I looked at it, the closer it would get. And it was doing whatever it could to get me to look at it. I kept running towards wherever I thought would be the safest. Downtown. Lots of people around, even at night. I didn't know if this thing cared about witnesses, but suddenly my memory was brought back to the incident the day before with the ice cream man in the park. It became obvious that it could only be seen by whoever it wanted to see it, which, in this case, regrettably was me. I made it to the heart of downtown, stopping to catch my breath outside of a trendy nightclub with a long line of people waiting outside to get in. I leaned on the wall of the building on the opposite side of the entrance from where the line was forming. After a few moments of gasping for air and getting my heart rate under control, I turned to look at the line of people, hoping to see someone, anyone that I recognized, or maybe even a police officer nearby that might help me out. But instead, amidst the line of people, what caught my eye were those cold, piercing, white, beady eyes and that smooth, haunting porcelain face. It towered high above any of the other patrons, its blank stare fixed on me from behind the people. It began to move along the side of people, barely giving me a chance to react before it had closed another 100 feet. By the time I stopped looking at it, it was only 150 feet away, making that stomach-churning wailing noise. It gained another 50 feet when I accidentally turned and saw it in the reflection in the side mirror of the taxi parked outside the nightclub. Fast forward to now. I had made it all the way back home, but it gained another 50 feet when I saw it standing in the yard outside my bedroom window. If it keeps moving at the same pace, then I estimate that I only get one more look before it gets to me. You see, well, I've locked myself in the bathroom, and the door faces the mirror, so no matter whether I walk backwards or forwards out of here, I'm sort of out of luck. I can hear that noise. I can hear it coming from outside the door, and even if I do make it out of this room, it's only a matter of time until I pass some kind of reflective surface. So, hopefully, this message reaches you before it's too late and you find yourself in my situation. And remember your manners, because, like your mother always told you, it's not polite to stare. The end.
It's funny because the whole concept to her story is the creature gets closer the more you look at it. So it's like the reverse of a weeping angel. So all I can imagine was like, hey!
Yeah, it's literally trying to get your attention like, love me, senpai. Notice me, senpai. And you're like, no. I don't want to. And it's like, please. That's why it's called a weeper. It's like, notice me, senpai. It's the notice me, senpai monster. And now, thanks to him, I just realized that. Okay, but fun sidetrack story. When I wrote that story, the way that I write stories is usually I'll get the image of the creature in my mind first, and I'll be like, I want to write something about that thing, because it's creepy. And so I got the idea for the weeper when I was in the shower, and at like 2 o'clock in the morning. So I get done in my shower, go out to the bedroom, and I'm like, gotta write this down, gotta draw what it looks like so I can go to sleep and pick it up in the morning. Didn't tell him what was going on, so he's completely in the dark, literally and figuratively. I plop down on my bed with about 6 sheets of printer paper and a pen and start rapidly scribbling the thing that I just described on paper.
Yes.
On 6 pages, like The Ring, and just leave them strewn across the bedroom. Again, he has no idea what's going on.
I was in the recording studio at the time, and I got up to go outside onto the balcony, and as I was walking past, because I have to walk through the bedroom to get to the balcony, and as I was walking past, I just see her sitting on the bed doing this. And I'm like, you okay?
And I have my headphones in, so I don't hear him. I'm just...
And she was making like
very
really messed up pictures.
well, messed up pictures, but angry faces too. He goes, gotta get this down. And I'm like,
And there's already like 5 pages of the thing that I described strewn across the room, and I'm just like, and he's like, time to burn the apartment down.
hello, police? Yeah.
Time to go.
She's making cool pictures. Okay, so this story I did last night, so I'm sorry for that, but it's a pretty fun story, I like to think. I was late to the Pokemon Go party. Having only downloaded the game a few days ago. I guess I was afraid that I'd get bullied if my classmates found out about it. You see, last year, they caught me playing Pokemon Y and tormented me for months afterwards. As tempting as it was to play, I was more afraid of the social stigma attached to Pokemon. But when I saw the very same people who mocked and belittled me over Pokemon Y were now walking around the school trying to catch wild Pokemon with their phones, I realized I had nothing to worry about. I had a lot of work to do if I wanted to catch up to the level of the players in my town, and I mean a lot. The thing is, I live out in the country, and it takes me 2 buses to reach my town. This is extremely problematic because unless you've been living under a rock for the past month, you probably already know that Pokestops always tie into real-world landmarks. A statue, a church, a store, or even a police station. There's always something. When you live in the middle of nowhere, like I do, well, those things don't really exist. What I'm trying to get at is there weren't any Pokestops near my house. Or even Pokemon themselves were scarce. So while I did encounter the random Rattatas and Pidgeys after wandering for miles on the only road in the vicinity, I quickly found myself running low on items. So I came up with a plan. I'd hang around town after school and go Pokemon hunting before catching the last bus home. My parents wouldn't mind. As soon as the last bell of the day rang, I followed the tidal wave of students running down the stairs and out of the building. Most of them were just trying to get prime seating on the bus, while others were doing like me and going off on their own Pokemon adventures. Still, a little self-conscious, I strayed away from my fellow classmates, but headed towards Main Street in hopes of replenishing my stock. Bingo! There were at least 3 Pokestops on the map. I tracked each one down, spun the icon, and earned myself some much-needed Pokeballs and potions. Just as I was about to turn back and head home, I spotted one last Pokestop that I had missed previously. Somebody had placed a lure on it. If you're not familiar, a lure is a special item that is placed on Pokestops which attract various Pokemon to them, and it benefits other players in the area. So, it was bound to be teeming with Pokemon. I decided I would make one last stop before heading home. I turned around and started walking towards the point on the map. It was a ways away, but I was determined to reach it. You don't just let a perfectly good lure go to waste. The closer I got to the Pokestop, the more unnerved I became. My steps barely seemed to make an impact on the map. The Pokestops I had visited earlier were 20, maybe 30 minutes away by foot. I was pretty sure I'd already passed the 30-minute mark at this point, but I was only halfway to the stop. And as I continued along, I realized it led me straight towards the woods. I stopped at the edge of the forest, perplexed. I stared at my screen, wondering what a Pokestop was doing in the middle of nowhere, as the icon showed nothing but blackness. What were the GPS coordinates pointing to? I never heard of there being any kind of building or statue or whatever in the woods. Something just didn't sit right with me. The little voice at the back of my head told me to just turn away and go home. But as I saw the lure expire, just like that, a new one took its place. I decided to throw caution to the wind and press on. I just couldn't convince myself to waste that damn lure. I trudged into the forest, paying more attention to my phone than my whereabouts. It was getting closer now, almost close enough to activate the Pokestop. Heck, I was already noticing an increase in Pokemon in the area. They caused me to stop and change my course a few times. Then, just as I was about to reach my destination, the unsurprising happened. My phone battery died, and my screen went black. I cursed beneath my breath. Now, I was in the middle of the woods, not even 100 feet from the Pokestop I had walked so far to reach, but with absolutely no way to reap the benefits. Worse yet, I realized I didn't even know my way back. The snap of a twig brought my attention to someone several yards away. I recognized my classmate on the other side of a nearby clearing. His nose was glued to his screen as he searched for the mysterious Pokestop. I was just about to call out to him when I heard another sound. Just as Frank reached the clearing, someone ran out from the bushes and tackled him to the ground. I'm not sure what I saw. I'm not sure if my mind is filling in the blanks with horrific details or I really saw the hulking figure of a man bring his baseball bat down on Frank's skull. I know for sure what I heard though. I know I heard the whipping sound it made as it came down and the nauseating crack when it hit its target. For as long as I live, I will never forget that grotesque sound. It was so violently loud that it made all the birds in the area fly away. So terrifying that I didn't even realize I was screaming until I saw the bat-wielding man was running towards me with the blood-caked weapon. I saw the crimson stain his face and clothes. The color was what brought me back to my senses. At least, enough to get me to run for my life. I stumbled through the bushes and ran until I was completely out of breath. And when I couldn't run anymore, I hid. I hid and prayed that my nervous, exhausted, hyperventilating breaths wouldn't give me away. I know you're out there, he said. His chilling, stoic voice knocked the wind out of me. I'm going to catch you. Trembling, I hugged my knees and made myself as small as I could. Meanwhile, his footsteps grew closer. Beads of sweat rolled down my face. I didn't know if he'd pass me or spot me immediately. How noticeable was I? I couldn't even remember what I was wearing. Something bright? Oh God, I hope not. Come out, wherever you are. Every word out of his mouth felt like a dagger in my chest. I'm going to find you. I whimpered. Big mistake. His footsteps quickened. He knew where I was. He had to know. I had no choice. I darted out of my hiding spot and started running again. My body was shaking. My legs could barely hold my weight. I felt lightheaded, yet somehow this time, I didn't run out of breath. I could hear him following me though. His footsteps grew more distant. And finally, I made it out of the woods. I didn't stop running until I was at the bus stop, and my heart didn't stop pounding until I got home. I told my parents everything. I'm not sure if they believed me because they called Frank's parents first. When they were told that he hadn't come home yet, they finally called the police. The cops combed the woods in search of the man I had seen, but all they found were bodies. 5 bodies, to be exact. Frank, a few teenagers from my school, and 2 grade school kids. 2 children, only a few years younger than me. I don't know what scares me the most. The thought that if my battery hadn't died, that I would be dead right now. Or the fact that they didn't find the guy, and he's still out there, using Pokestops and lures to add people to his own sick Pokemon Go collection. The end.
I'd like to think there was a bonus alternative ending where the last line was, but I'm still gonna catch that Bulbasaur though.
But there's a lure up the street. Gotta go catch 'em all.
Let's be honest, like, that whole story could have been over at the inevitable happened, my phone died, because that's enough of a creepypasta by itself.
And then my phone died.
Where are my team instincts?
And then a skeleton popped out of my phone.
Anybody? Any team instincts?
What?
I said, where are my instincts in the room?
Team Instinct.
Followers of the great lightning god. Yes.
Team Valor.
No.
You deleted it.
Team Mystic.
You were
Good for you.
One team. You can't do that.
Good for you,
Team
Mystic.
Valor. Team Mystic. Team Instinct. I love everyone equally. Yeah, as a local 30 Team Instinct, I take that last story very personally. All right, we've got time for one more story. So I'm gonna make it a short one. All right. That will look the right word document. All right.
It was a gas leak.
No, the real creepypasta is rolling up on a Lapras and having one regular Pokeball. That is the creepypasta. All right, so we are going to do one that I love to do at conventions called Call Me Tomorrow, Okay. Not it, like that. When you are ready, Maestro. Still no messages on my phone. I guess he wasn't gonna call me back after all. I can't really blame him. Maybe I came on a bit too fast yesterday. I had noticed him long before he noticed me. His shiny black hair and gorgeous blue eyes. I was not the only one watching him, that's for sure. His movements were graceful, but in a manly way. And his smile, oh man, his smile. I would die for that smile. Oh, still no messages. I thought about calling him, maybe apologizing for going too fast yesterday. I'm a coward, I know, but I just couldn't bring myself to dial his number. Besides, he promised me that he'd contact me when he was ready. So I'll wait. I'm patient. Oh, I know. I'll just casually stroll past his house just to see if he's home. Maybe he's out. That would explain why he couldn't call me yet. He only lives half an hour away anyway. Maybe he's shy and is just too scared to call me. Silly boy. I'll go to him and tell him that he doesn't need to be scared. I don't mind if he needs time. He lives pretty secluded in a farm on the outskirts of town. I can hear the sheep in the stables as I approach. My heart skips when I see that there's lights burning inside. He must be there. He told me yesterday that his parents would be gone for the entire weekend. They left him to look after the sheep for all those days. Oh, poor baby. That must be such hard work. He was probably just too busy to call me. I'll have to stay here until his parents come back and help him take care of all those sheep. I knock on the door, but he doesn't answer. Maybe he fell asleep. The thought of his gorgeous face, even more softened by sleep, makes me smile to myself. I try the door and it's unlocked. There's hardly any crime around here, so I guess locking the door isn't really necessary. I try to be as quiet as possible as I sneak through the house. I want to surprise him, and I cringe at every creak the stairs make as I climb them. Finally, I've reached the bedroom and I carefully open his door. There he is, lying in bed just like I thought. Quietly, I switch on the nightlight on his desk so that I can see his face. His blue eyes are open, staring into space, and his whole face is one bloody mess. His cheeks, they've been carved up, the skin mostly removed and hanging loose from the sides of his face. He's missing his fingernails. They're laid out on the bed, carefully arranged. On his bare chest, there are words carved into the skin. I look at him, my hands covering my mouth. He's still the same as I left him yesterday. He must have been so tired that he slept all day. How cute! I softly kiss his forehead, making sure that I don't wake him. Then I write another message below the one on his chest, letting him know that I'm here when he needs me. I leave the room, heading back outside. I think it's time for the sheep to go to sleep. Oh, and tomorrow, I'll introduce myself to his parents. I'm sure they'll love me too. The end. And Josh, the end starts playing.
I won't try and do this one more story, one last story from me. Real quick, tomorrow we have a Q&A at 1 p.m. in the main event hall, so if you want to hear us talk about our cat, that's where you should go. Kevin, exactly. We're going to talk about Kevin tomorrow. It's going to be a treat for everyone. Just kidding. It's going to be evil. Okay. I am in constant, unbearable pain all of the time. I just want to die. I'm writing this about why, so hopefully you won't make the same mistake that I did. I made a deal with the devil. I was dying of cancer and I wanted my family to be financially comfortable after my death. So, after summoning him, I will not include how to do this because it's something you should never, ever do. I asked him to make sure my family had enough money to live comfortably after my demise. He smiled and said, "Sure. And I'll even take away your cancer while I'm at it." Now, I'm not an idiot. Well, I guess I am. But at the same time, I didn't think so. I knew enough to know that there's always a catch. So obviously I asked him, "What's the catch?" He simply smiled again. "All you have to do is allow me to remove one organ from your body. Any organ of my choosing." So I think about it. I figure it has to be some kind of trick. He's just gonna remove my heart or something and kill me. So I want to make sure I get this right. I say to him, "Are you gonna take a vital organ?" He laughs. "I can make it so you can live without the organ I choose." Then he pauses. "So, do we have a deal?" I go through all the scenarios in my head. If he removes my heart, I can still survive because he will make it so. Living without a heart wouldn't be so bad, I guess. Lungs, same thing. Stomach, yeah. I went through every organ I could think of. Imagined life without it. And decided that, yeah, I'd be willing to give up any one of them. So I said 3 words that I will regret for the rest of my life. It's a deal. Fun fact. Did you know your skin is considered an organ? The end. Not itchy anymore.
Not itchy anymore. So that's the last story we have for you tonight. We hope you guys enjoyed it.
Yeah. Feel free to go to our YouTube channels and listen to the edited versions of those where they're actually cleaned up.
Where I don't get the hiccups in the middle of the story that we did. And I don't get the terrible urge to sneeze in the middle of Call Me Tomorrow, okay?
But yeah, once again, this is Miss Shadow Lovely, and I am Creepypasta Jr.
And for those of you who weren't here at the beginning of the panel, I want you to leave this panel, put your first name into Google, followed by the words "The Hedgehog," and then look at the image search results, and
Tag
report
Delta
back
H
tomorrow. Tag Delta H on. So they will be super confused as to why all these hedgehog OCs are being posted to their Facebook pages, and then just all
do that, because that
No,
would be...
do it. I'm dead serious. Anyway, we do have another panel tomorrow. It is a Q&A where we will, I'm sure, just talk about our cat for an hour as per usual.
Yes.
At 1 p.m.
1 p.m. tomorrow in the main events
in
hall.
the giant events hall.
Yes. And we will talk about Kevin.
And if you don't get a chance to see us there, we will also be at Chris Osbolton's booth in the Artist Alley by the foam fighting pit.
The foam fighting pit
And
with
you
the
can get
giant
prints of
banners.
us and prints of other Creepypasta characters and all sorts of really cool stuff. So with that being said, thank you so much, everybody.
Thank you so
You guys were
much.
the best.
Yes, you guys are awesome and amazing, and enjoy the rest of Delta H Con.
Yeah.